The radio crackled to life in the humid darkness of the Afghan mountains. Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison pressed his earpiece closer, straining to hear through the static that plagued communications in this godforsaken valley. His SEAL team had been tracking a high-value target for 3 days, moving through terrain that seemed designed to break both bodies and spirits. "Overwatch to ground team. We have eyes on your position," came a voice through the comm system. The speaker was clearly female, her tone professional and calm despite the chaos erupting around their objective. Jake's team was pinned down behind a cluster of rocks, taking sporadic fire from insurgents who had somehow anticipated their approach. "Copy that, Overwatch. We need immediate fire support on the ridgeline, about 200 meters northwest of our position," Jake responded, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. He had been in situations like this countless times, but something felt different tonight. The intelligence had been too perfect, the enemy's positioning too strategic. "Roger that, ground team. This is Ghost 9 providing Overwatch. Stand by for suppression fire." The moment those words left the radio, Jake felt his blood turn to ice. Ghost 9. He knew that call sign, had heard stories whispered in the darkest corners of military bars from Afghanistan to Syria. Ghost 9 was a legend, a phantom that appeared when missions went sideways and disappeared just as quickly. Most soldiers dismissed the stories as folklore, tales told to boost morale or frighten enemies. But Jake knew better. 3 years ago, during a classified operation in Syria, his previous team had been ambushed and overwhelmed. They were facing certain death when precise sniper fire began picking off their attackers one by one. The shots came from impossible angles, each one perfectly placed to maximum effect. When backup arrived hours later, they found only Jake's team alive and a single spent casing from a rifle that officially didn't exist. The local commander had mentioned Ghost 9 in passing, quickly changing the subject when pressed for details. Since then, Jake had heard fragments of stories from other operators. A mysterious sniper who appeared during the most desperate situations, always operating alone, never staying long enough for proper identification. Some said Ghost 9 was a myth created by intelligence agencies to intimidate enemies. Others swore they had seen the Phantom in action. "Ghost 9, confirm your position for safety protocols," Jake transmitted, following standard procedure while his mind raced with questions. "Negative on position disclosure, ground team. Focus on your mission. I have clear lines of sight on all hostile positions." The voice was different from any operator Jake had worked with before. There was something almost ethereal about it, as if the speaker existed somewhere between the physical world and the digital realm of radio waves. Yet beneath that otherworldly quality lay unmistakable competence and authority. Suddenly, the insurgent fire began to diminish. Through his night vision scope, Jake watched as muzzle flashes on the ridgeline went dark one by one. Each shot from Ghost 9 was perfectly timed, creating maximum psychological impact on the remaining enemies. It wasn't just marksmanship. It was psychological warfare at its finest. "Ground team, you have a clear path to your objective. Hostiles are neutralized or retreating. You have approximately 8 minutes before reinforcements arrive from the village." Jake signaled to his team, and they moved with practiced efficiency toward their target building. As they advanced, he couldn't shake the feeling that invisible eyes were watching their every move, calculating angles and distances, ready to provide protection from threats they couldn't even see. Sergeant Martinez, his communications specialist, fell into step beside him. "Sir, that call sign. I've heard rumors." "Focus on the mission, Martinez," Jake replied, though his own mind was spinning with possibilities. Who was Ghost 9? How did they have such detailed intelligence about enemy movements? And why did their voice carry the weight of someone who had seen too much and survived when others hadn't? The target building appeared ahead, a 2-story structure that intelligence suggested housed a bomb maker responsible for attacks on coalition forces. As they approached, Jake's tactical awareness was heightened by the knowledge that someone with extraordinary skills was watching over them. It was both comforting and unsettling. Ghost 9 were approaching the primary objective. Any movement inside the structure? Negative on internal movement. 2 sentries eliminated on the roof approximately 3 minutes ago. Building appears clear, but maintain standard clearing protocols. I cannot guarantee internal security. The clinical precision of Ghost 9's reports was remarkable. No wasted words, no emotional inflection, just pure tactical information delivered with the efficiency of a computer program. Yet Jake detected something else in those transmissions, a protective instinct that went beyond standard Overwatch duties. As his team prepared to breach the building, Jake found himself wondering about the person behind the call sign. The military was changing, with more women taking on combat roles. But the mysterious nature of Ghost 9's operations suggested something beyond conventional special forces. This was someone who operated in the shadows between official missions and deniable operations. "Breach in 30 seconds, Jake announced to his team while simultaneously transmitting to Ghost 9. "Request final perimeter check. All clear, ground team. I have 3 escape routes covered, and early warning systems in place for approaching vehicles. You're clear to proceed." The building breach went flawlessly, with Jake's team securing the structure and gathering critical intelligence about future bombing operations. Throughout the entire operation, Ghost 9 maintained perfect overwatch, providing updates that demonstrated an almost supernatural awareness of the tactical situation. As they prepared to exfiltrate, Jake realized this encounter had changed something fundamental in his understanding of modern warfare. Ghost 9 represented a new kind of operator, someone who bridged the gap between human intuition and technological precision. The question that burned in his mind was whether he would ever learn the true identity of the person who had just saved his team's lives. The radio crackled one final time as they began their withdrawal. "Ground team, this is Ghost 9, mission accomplished. Stay safe out there." And then, like a phantom disappearing into the night, Ghost 9 was gone, leaving only questions and the memory of a voice that would haunt Jake's dreams for months to come. 6 months later, Jake found himself in a windowless briefing room at Joint Special Operations Command headquarters in Virginia. The fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across the faces of the assembled officers, all of whom carried the weathered look of operators who had seen too much combat. Colonel Sarah Reeves stood at the front of the room, her expression grave as she prepared to deliver what would clearly be an unusual briefing. "Gentlemen, what I'm about to tell you doesn't leave this room," Colonel Reeves began, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had earned her position through years of operational excellence. "For the past 18 months, we've been tracking a series of successful operations across multiple theaters that share one common element: the appearance of an unidentified asset using the call sign Ghost 9. Jake felt his pulse quicken. The mysterious voice that had saved his team in Afghanistan was apparently more active than he had imagined. Around the room, he noticed other operators shifting uncomfortably, and he wondered how many of them had their own Ghost 9 encounters. The asset appears to be operating independently, with no official connection to any known special operations units. Yet their tactical knowledge and marksmanship capabilities exceed anything we've seen from conventional forces." Colonel Reeves clicked a remote, and a map appeared on the wall display showing locations across Afghanistan, Syria, Iraq, and Somalia. Red dots marked successful operations where Ghost 9 had provided critical support. Captain Rodriguez, a veteran Marine sniper, raised his hand. "Ma'am, are we talking about a rogue operator? Someone who's gone off the grid?" "That's what we initially assumed," Colonel Reeves replied. "But the pattern of intervention suggests something else entirely. Ghost 9 only appears when legitimate special operations teams are in immediate danger. Never during routine missions, never in situations that don't involve saving American lives. It's as if this person has access to our mission planning and chooses when to intervene." Jake's mind raced back to that night in Afghanistan. The timing had been perfect, the tactical support flawless. But more than that, Ghost 9 had seemed to understand the emotional weight of the situation, providing exactly the right kind of support at precisely the right moment. "Sir," Jake spoke up, "I was the team leader during the Afghanistan operation marked on your display. Ghost 9 didn't just provide overwatch. They anticipated our needs and adjusted their support in real time. That level of tactical awareness suggests extensive training and combat experience." Colonel Reeves nodded. "Which brings us to why you're all here. We need to identify Ghost 9, not to prosecute or eliminate, but to understand how they operate and potentially bring them into official channels. The Pentagon is concerned about having an uncontrolled asset with this level of capability operating in our theaters of operation." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Tracking down Ghost 9 would be like hunting a ghost that didn't want to be found, someone who had demonstrated the ability to appear and disappear without leaving traces that conventional intelligence could follow. "What do we know about their equipment and methodology?" asked Lieutenant Wilson, a technology specialist who had worked on several classified surveillance projects. Colonel Reeves clicked to another slide showing ballistics reports and tactical analyses. The few shell casings we've recovered suggest custom ammunition, fired from a rifle that doesn't match any known military or civilian models. The precision of the shots indicates either extensive training or technological assistance beyond standard military equipment. Jake studied the data, but something else nagged at him. "Ma'am, in my encounter, Ghost 9 demonstrated knowledge about our mission timeline and enemy reinforcement schedules that would have required access to classified intelligence briefings." "How is that possible for an independent operator?" "That's one of our primary concerns," Colonel Reeves admitted. "Either Ghost 9 has compromised our communication systems, which would represent a serious security breach, or they have inside knowledge of our operations. Either possibility is acceptable from a security standpoint." As the briefing continued, Jake found himself remembering details from his encounter that he hadn't fully processed at the time. Ghost 9's voice had carried an emotional undertone that suggested personal investment in the mission's success. This wasn't someone operating purely from tactical calculations. There was something deeper motivating their actions. "The mission parameters are straightforward," Colonel Reeves continued. "We want eyes on Ghost 9 during their next appearance. No engagement, no interference, just observation and identification. Intelligence suggests that several operations in the coming weeks have the profile that typically attracts Ghost 9's attention." The colonel handed out folders containing classified mission details. As Jake opened his folder, he saw that his team would be conducting a high-risk extraction in Somalia, rescuing a captured intelligence officer from a heavily defended compound. The mission profile was exactly the type that would likely draw Ghost 9's interest. "Remember," Colonel Reeves emphasized, "Ghost 9 has consistently acted in support of American forces. Our goal is identification and potential recruitment, not neutralization. However, we need to understand their capabilities and intentions before they become a liability rather than an asset." After the briefing, Jake walked through the corridors of the headquarters building, his mind processing the implications of hunting someone who had saved his life. Part of him hoped they would never find Ghost 9, that the mysterious operator would continue their shadow support missions without interference from bureaucratic oversight. But another part of him was intensely curious about the person behind the call sign. Who had the skills and resources to operate independently at this level? What motivated someone to risk their life protecting strangers without seeking recognition or reward? And most intriguingly, how did they always seem to know exactly when and where they were needed? As Jake prepared his team for the Somalia mission, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was about to become part of a larger story, one that would challenge his understanding of loyalty, duty, and the true meaning of service. Ghost 9 had remained hidden for months, but Jake suspected that their next encounter would reveal secrets that would change everything he thought he knew about modern warfare. The hunt for Ghost 9 was about to begin, but Jake wondered if they were really the hunters, or if they were simply playing their assigned roles in a much larger and more complex operation that Ghost 9 had been orchestrating all along. The Somali compound sat like a fortress in the pre-dawn darkness, surrounded by high walls topped with razor wire, and patrolled by guards who moved with the disciplined precision of former military personnel. Jake's team had been observing the target for 6 hours, mapping guard rotations and identifying potential breach points for their rescue mission. Intelligence officer Sarah Chen had been captured 3 days earlier while conducting surveillance on a terrorist cell operating out of Mogadishu. The window for rescue was closing rapidly, as hostages in this region rarely survived beyond a week in captivity. Jake's team represented Chen's best and possibly only chance for survival. "Alpha team in position," Jake whispered into his radio, watching through night vision as his teammates moved into their assigned positions around the compound's perimeter. The mission plan was aggressive but necessary, a coordinated assault designed to overwhelm the defenders before they could harm their hostage. As they prepared to execute the breach, Jake found himself scanning the surrounding hills for any sign of Ghost 9. According to the intelligence analysis, this mission fit the exact profile that had attracted the mysterious operator's attention in previous operations: high risk, American lives in danger, and a tactical situation that could benefit from expert Overwatch support. "Bravo team ready for breaching charge," reported Sergeant Martinez from his position near the compound's main entrance. The explosive device would create their primary entry point, though success depended entirely on speed and coordination in the following minutes. Jake was about to give the execute order when his radio crackled with an unexpected transmission. Ground team, this is Ghost 9. Hold your position and abort current breach plan. Every muscle in Jake's body tensed. Ghost 9 was here, just as the intelligence analysts had predicted. But instead of providing support, the mysterious operator was ordering them to abort their carefully planned mission. Ghost 9, this is ground team leader. We have a hostage with limited time window. Explain your assessment, Jake responded, fighting to keep his voice calm while his mind raced with possibilities. Your intelligence is compromised. The compound has been reinforced with twice the expected personnel, and your target location for the hostage is incorrect. Current breach plan will result in mission failure and probable casualties. Jake felt his blood run cold. If Ghost 9 was correct, they were walking into a trap that could cost lives and end any chance of rescuing Chen. But how could the mysterious operator have better intelligence than their official briefing? Ghost 9, confirm your source for this assessment. I have eyes on the compound interior through thermal imaging. 15 additional personnel arrived 2 hours ago, and the hostage has been moved to the basement level. Your current entry points are covered by overlapping fields of fire. Through his scope, Jake began to notice details that hadn't been visible during their initial reconnaissance. Subtle changes in guard positioning, additional equipment that suggested recent reinforcement, and movement patterns that indicated higher alertness levels than expected. What do you recommend? Jake asked, making the decision to trust Ghost 9's assessment despite the deviation from official mission parameters. Single operator entry through the north wall, where construction materials provide concealment. I can neutralize perimeter guards and create a distraction on the south side. You extract the hostage while their attention is diverted. The plan was audacious and would require split-second timing between Jake's team and Ghost 9's independent actions. But Jake remembered the flawless coordination during their Afghanistan encounter and decided to trust the mysterious operator's tactical judgment. Ghost 9, be advised we have secondary objectives to identify your position and capabilities. This may complicate coordination. There was a pause before Ghost 9 responded, and Jake detected what might have been amusement in the transmitted voice. Ground team leader, I'm aware of your secondary mission parameters. Complete your primary objective first. We'll address other matters afterward. Jake realized that Ghost 9 not only knew about their mission to rescue Chen, but also understood the official orders to identify and track the mysterious operator. The level of intelligence access this implied was staggering, and raised questions about security breaches at the highest levels of command. All teams, abort original breach plan. We're implementing Ghost 9's alternative approach, Jake announced to his squad, watching as his teammates adjusted their positions with practiced efficiency. Over the next 30 minutes, Jake witnessed tactical precision that exceeded anything he had experienced in 15 years of special operations. Ghost 9's suppressed rifle eliminated guards with shots so accurate and perfectly timed that the remaining defenders never realized they were under attack. Each elimination created a specific gap in their defensive perimeter that Jake's team could exploit. The distraction on the south side of the compound was a masterpiece of psychological warfare. Rather than a direct assault, Ghost 9 created the illusion of a much larger attacking force using precisely placed explosive charges and coordinated radio transmissions that convinced the defenders they were facing a major assault, while the compound's personnel focused on repelling the phantom attack. Jake slipped through the north wall breach point that Ghost 9 had identified. The route to the basement was exactly as described, and he found Chen alive but weakened in a cell that would have been impossible to locate using their original intelligence. Package secured, Jake transmitted as he helped Chen toward the extraction point. Ghost 9, confirm exfiltration route. Clear path to northeast corner. I'll maintain suppression fire to cover your withdrawal. As Jake's team successfully extracted with their rescued hostage, he couldn't help but admire the way Ghost 9 had orchestrated every element of the mission revision. It wasn't just tactical skill. It demonstrated an understanding of human psychology and battlefield dynamics that approached artistry. During their helicopter extraction, Jake attempted to make contact with Ghost 9 one final time. Ghost 9, Request meet for debrief and coordination discussion. The response came through clearly despite the helicopter's noise. Ground team leader. Some conversations require specific circumstances. Your questions will be answered, but not today. As they flew away from the compound, Jake realized that Ghost 9 had demonstrated capabilities that went far beyond individual marksmanship or tactical knowledge. This was someone with access to real-time intelligence, advanced equipment, and operational planning skills that rivaled the best military strategists. But more than that, Ghost 9 had shown an almost protective instinct toward Jake's team, intervening not just to complete the mission but to ensure their safety. The mysterious operator's concern seemed personal, rather than purely professional, which raised even more intriguing questions about their true identity and motivations. 3 weeks after the Somalia extraction, Jake received an encrypted message that appeared on his secure tablet during a routine training exercise at Camp Pendleton. The message contained only GPS coordinates and a time, 2200 hours tonight. No signature, no explanation. But Jake knew instinctively that Ghost 9 was finally ready for that conversation. The coordinates led to an abandoned warehouse in the industrial district outside San Diego, a location that provided multiple escape routes and clear sightlines. Exactly what someone with Ghost 9's tactical mindset would choose for a clandestine meeting. Jake informed Colonel Reeves about the contact, but made the decision to attend alone, sensing that bringing backup would only ensure Ghost 9's disappearance. As Jake approached the warehouse at the specified time, he noticed subtle security measures that demonstrated professional paranoia. Cameras had been disabled, streetlights had been carefully positioned to create shadows, and tire tracks in the dust suggested that someone had scouted multiple approach routes. Ghost 9 was taking no chances with this meeting. Inside the warehouse, Jake found himself in a space that had been transformed into a temporary command center. Multiple monitors displayed satellite feeds, communication intercepts, and real-time intelligence data that would have been impressive in an official military facility. The setup suggested resources and connections far beyond what any individual operator should possess. Lieutenant Commander Morrison, came the familiar voice from the shadows near the back of the warehouse. Thank you for coming alone. Jake turned toward the sound and finally saw Ghost 9 step into the light. The revelation was both shocking and somehow completely logical given everything he had observed. Ghost 9 was a woman in her early 30s wearing civilian clothes that couldn't disguise the athletic build and alert posture of a combat veteran. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and her eyes held the steady gaze of someone who had seen violence and death, but hadn't been broken by the experience. Dr. Elena Vasquez, she said, extending her hand with a slight smile. Former Army Special Forces, former CIA operations officer, and current freelance problem solver. Jake shook her hand, noting the firm grip and calloused fingers that spoke of extensive weapons training. Doctor? PhD in strategic studies from Georgetown, specializing in asymmetric warfare and counterterrorism operations. My dissertation was on the psychological factors that influence battlefield decision-making under extreme stress. Elena moved to one of the monitors, which displayed a detailed analysis of Jake's recent missions. I've been studying your operational patterns for quite some time, Lieutenant Commander. The casual mention of academic credentials alongside special operations experience painted a picture of someone who combined intellectual analysis with practical combat skills. Jake realized that Ghost 9 represented a new type of operator, one who could think strategically while maintaining the tactical expertise needed for direct action. Why reveal yourself now? Jake asked, studying Elena's command setup with growing amazement. You've maintained operational security for over a year. This meeting represents a significant risk. Elena turned from the monitors to face him directly, because the situation is changing in ways that require official cooperation rather than independent action. The intelligence I've been gathering indicates a terrorist network that's planning attacks on multiple American targets simultaneously. The scale is beyond what any individual operator can handle. She gestured to one of the displays showing a complex network analysis of terrorist connections across 3 continents. I've been tracking these connections through my interventions in various operations. Each mission where I provided support yielded intelligence about a larger conspiracy. Your teams were never the primary targets. You were being used as bait to draw out response patterns and identify American Special Operations capabilities. Jake felt his understanding of recent events shifting dramatically. You're saying that all those missions where you appeared weren't coincidental. Someone was deliberately creating situations to study our responses. Exactly. And they've been remarkably successful at gathering intelligence about American Special Operations tactics, timing, and coordination protocols. Every time we respond to their provocations, they learn something new about our capabilities. Elena highlighted specific data points on her analysis. But they made one critical mistake. They didn't account for an independent operator who could observe their patterns without being part of the official response structure. The implications were staggering. If Elena was correct, American Special Operations had been unknowingly participating in an intelligence-gathering operation that would eventually be used against them. The terrorist network had been playing a longer game than anyone had realized. How did you identify this pattern when official intelligence agencies missed it? Jake asked, though he was beginning to understand Elena's unique advantages. Academic training in pattern recognition, combined with operational experience and access to multiple intelligence streams through methods that aren't entirely official. Elena's smile was slight, but meaningful. I've maintained contacts throughout the intelligence community who share information when they encounter anomalies that don't fit standard analytical models. Jake realized that Elena represented something unprecedented in modern warfare, an independent analyst with operational capabilities who could see patterns that were invisible to people working within official structures. Her outside perspective allowed her to connect data points that would be compartmentalized within traditional intelligence organizations. The warehouse, the equipment, the real-time intelligence access. How do you fund and maintain all this independently? Elena walked to another monitor showing financial data and resource allocation charts. Private funding from individuals who understand the importance of having independent capabilities when official channels are compromised or insufficient. Some former military officers who've moved into the private sector, some academics who study security threats, and some technology specialists who develop tools that aren't available through standard procurement channels. The revelation that Elena had built an unofficial but professionally funded intelligence operation answered many questions about Ghost 9's capabilities, but it raised even more concerning questions about gaps in official security and oversight. What do you need from me? Jake asked, accepting that this conversation was leading toward a request for cooperation that would go far beyond standard operational parameters. I need access to official mission planning and real-time communication channels for upcoming operations. The terrorist network is preparing to execute their primary plan within the next few weeks, and stopping them will require coordination between my intelligence and official response capabilities. Elena displayed a timeline showing projected attacks on American facilities across the Middle East and Africa. The scope and coordination required suggested a level of planning and resources that represented a genuine strategic threat. You're asking me to provide classified information to someone operating outside official channels. That's a career-ending request, Dr. Vasquez. Elena met his gaze directly. I'm asking you to help prevent attacks that will cost American lives and potentially destabilize our entire approach to counter-terrorism operations in these regions. The choice is yours, Lieutenant Commander, but the consequences of inaction will be measured in body counts rather than career implications. Jake stared at the intelligence displays surrounding him, understanding that he was facing a decision that would define not only his career, but potentially the lives of countless American military personnel and civilians. Elena had demonstrated capabilities and insights that clearly exceeded official intelligence assets, but trusting her meant violating fundamental principles of military security and command structure. Jake spent 3 sleepless nights weighing Elena's request against his sworn oath to protect classified information. The decision became unavoidable when Colonel Reeves summoned him to an emergency briefing that confirmed Elena's warnings in the most alarming way possible. Intelligence indicates coordinated attacks planned against 6 American facilities across 3 theaters, Colonel Reeves announced to the assembled team leaders. The timing and targets suggest a level of coordination we haven't seen since the planning phases of September 11th. Jake studied the briefing materials with growing dread, recognizing locations and attack methodologies that Elena had predicted with uncanny accuracy. The terrorist network she had been tracking was indeed preparing for simultaneous strikes designed to overwhelm American response capabilities. "Sir," Jake interrupted, "what's our confidence level in the intelligence sources for this assessment?" Colonel Reeves hesitated before responding. "Multiple sources, but some of the intelligence comes from channels we can't fully verify. The National Security Agency intercepted communications that suggest the attacks are imminent, but we're missing critical details about timing and specific methodologies." Jake realized this was his moment to make the choice that Elena had forced upon him. He could follow official protocols and hope that conventional intelligence would fill the gaps in time to prevent the attacks, or he could violate his oath, to potentially save lives based on the insights of someone operating outside all official oversight. "Colonel, I may have access to additional intelligence sources that could provide the missing details," Jake said carefully, knowing that his next words would irrevocably change his military career. After the briefing, Jake met privately with Colonel Reeves to explain his contact with Elena and the intelligence she had gathered through her independent operations. The colonel's reaction was exactly what Jake had expected, a mixture of anger at the security breach and fascination with the tactical insights Elena had provided. "You're telling me that a former CIA officer has been operating independently for over a year, providing unofficial support to our operations, and has developed intelligence about terrorist networks that our official agencies missed?" Colonel Reeves summarized, her voice reflecting the impossibility of the situation. "Yes, ma'am. And her analysis indicates that the upcoming attacks are part of a larger strategy to provoke American military responses that will provide intelligence for even more devastating future operations." Colonel Reeves stood silently for several minutes, processing the implications. Finally, she made the decision that Jake had hoped for but hadn't dared expect. "Set up a meeting. If this Elena Vasquez has intelligence that can prevent American casualties, we need to hear what she has to say, regardless of the irregularity of the situation." 2 days later, Elena walked into a secure conference room at Joint Special Operations Command headquarters, carrying a tablet containing intelligence analysis that would revolutionize American understanding of the terrorist threat they were facing. Jake watched as she calmly presented her findings to a room full of senior military officers who had initially been skeptical about consulting an unofficial operator. The network calls itself the Heritage Coalition, and their strategy is based on provoking American military responses that can be studied, analyzed, and ultimately countered through asymmetric tactics, Elena explained, displaying network diagrams that connected terrorist cells across multiple continents. "Every time we respond to their provocations with standard special operations tactics, they gather data about our capabilities, response times, and coordination protocols." General Patricia Hayes, the commanding officer for Special Operations Command, studied Elena's analysis with the intensity of someone whose decisions affected thousands of lives. "Dr. Vasquez, your intelligence suggests that they've been deliberately sacrificing operational cells to gather information about our response capabilities. That level of strategic thinking indicates leadership with sophisticated military training." "Confirmed," Elena replied. "The Heritage Coalition's leadership includes former military officers from several nations who have extensive experience fighting American forces. They understand our tactical doctrines and have developed countermeasures, specifically designed to exploit our standard operational patterns." The briefing continued for 3 hours, with Elena providing detailed intelligence about attack planning, leadership structures, and strategic objectives that went far beyond anything the official intelligence community had developed. Her independent position had allowed her to gather and analyze information that would have been compartmentalized and potentially overlooked within traditional intelligence channels. "The question now," General Hayes concluded, "is how do we respond to threats when our conventional approaches have been compromised by enemy intelligence gathering?" Elena activated another display showing proposed operational modifications. "We changed the rules completely. Instead of responding to their provocations with predictable tactics, we use their intelligence-gathering operations against them. We provide false information about our capabilities while gathering real intelligence about their networks through controlled exposure operations." Jake watched as the senior officers absorbed Elena's recommendations, realizing that she was proposing a fundamental shift in American counterterrorism strategy. Rather than simply reacting to terrorist threats, she was suggesting that they turn the entire dynamic into an intelligence-gathering operation that would ultimately eliminate the terrorist networks through systematic deception and misdirection. Dr. Vasquez, Colonel Reeves interjected, implementing your recommendations would require coordination between multiple agencies and approval from the highest levels of government. What makes you think such a complex operation could remain secure given the intelligence breaches you've already identified? Elena smiled with the confidence of someone who had anticipated this question. Because we're not going to use official channels for the most critical elements. The Heritage Coalition has been successful because they've compromised our conventional intelligence and operational structures. We counter that advantage by operating through unofficial networks they can't monitor or predict. The room fell silent as the implications became clear. Elena wasn't just proposing a new tactical approach, she was suggesting the creation of an entirely unofficial special operations capability that could act independently of the systems that had been compromised by enemy intelligence gathering. General Hayes leaned forward in her chair. You're talking about sanctioning illegal operations conducted by personnel operating outside military command structures. That's a political decision far above my authority level. No, ma'am, Elena corrected. I'm talking about providing official support for operations that are already happening independently. The difference is coordination versus isolation. You can work with me to maximize effectiveness, or you can continue operating within compromised systems while I work independently with limited resources. Jake recognized the chess move Elena had just executed. She had presented the military leadership with intelligence they needed to prevent attacks, while simultaneously demonstrating that she could operate effectively with or without their cooperation. The choice was between official coordination or continued unofficial independence, but either way, Elena would continue her operations. General Hayes exchanged glances with the other senior officers before responding. Dr. Vasquez, you've given us a lot to consider. We'll need time to evaluate your proposals and determine what level of cooperation might be possible within legal and policy constraints. Elena gathered her materials with practiced efficiency. General, the Heritage Coalition's attacks are scheduled to begin in less than 72 hours. Policy considerations are important, but preventing American casualties takes priority. I'll be implementing countermeasures with or without official coordination. The question is whether you want to be part of the solution or simply hope for the best. As Elena left the conference room, Jake realized that the mysterious Ghost 9 had evolved into something far more significant than an individual operator providing tactical support. She had become the catalyst for a fundamental examination of how America approached modern warfare against enemies who understood and exploited conventional military thinking. The next 48 hours transformed Elena Vasquez from an unofficial asset into the cornerstone of the most complex counter-terrorism operation in American military history. Working from a hastily established command center in a secure facility outside Washington, she coordinated simultaneous operations across 3 continents while military leaders watched in amazement at her tactical orchestration. Jake found himself serving as Elena's official military liaison, translating her unconventional strategies into operational parameters that could be implemented by special forces teams trained in standard doctrines. The role required him to think beyond everything he had learned in 15 years of military service, adapting to Elena's fluid approach to battlefield management. The Heritage Coalition expects us to respond to their provocations with overwhelming force, Elena explained to the assembled team leaders during the final operational briefing. Instead, we're going to use precisely calibrated responses that appear to follow predictable patterns while actually gathering intelligence about their command structure and resource allocation. The first phase of Elena's plan involved allowing one of the planned terrorist attacks to proceed exactly as the Heritage Coalition intended, with American forces responding according to established tactical doctrines. However, unknown to the terrorists, every element of the American response had been carefully orchestrated to provide false intelligence while gathering real information about terrorist communication networks and leadership hierarchies. Jake led his team into what appeared to be a conventional rescue operation at a diplomatic facility in Kenya. following standard protocols while Elena monitored terrorist communications from her command center. To external observers, the mission appeared to follow predictable American operational patterns, but every action had been designed to elicit specific responses that would reveal critical intelligence about the Heritage Coalition structure. Ground Team. Execute Phase 2 of the Deception Protocol. Elena transmitted as Jake's team completed their apparent rescue mission. Your withdrawal route and timing will convince them that American response capabilities are exactly what they predicted. The second phase involved Elena's independent operations against Heritage Coalition facilities that the official American response had apparently overlooked. While terrorist leaders celebrated their successful intelligence gathering against Jake's conventional operation, Elena systematically dismantled their actual operational capabilities using techniques that left no evidence of American involvement. Over the course of 18 hours, Elena eliminated key Heritage Coalition leaders through methods that appeared to be internal power struggles rather than external attacks. Her deep understanding of terrorist psychology and group dynamics allowed her to create the impression that the organization was destroying itself through typical factional conflicts. The beauty of this approach, Elena explained to General Hayes during a secure video conference, is that we're not just preventing their current attacks. We're convincing them that American special operations capabilities are limited to conventional responses while we systematically eliminate their entire network. By the end of the operation, the Heritage Coalition had been effectively destroyed without ever realizing they were under coordinated attack. Their leadership attributed the organization's collapse to internal betrayals and strategic miscalculations, never understanding that every element of their downfall had been orchestrated by Elena's unprecedented combination of tactical expertise and psychological manipulation. Jake watched Elena coordinate the final phases of the operation with a mixture of admiration and concern. Her capabilities exceeded anything he had encountered in conventional military training, but the implications of her methods raised fundamental questions about the future of American special operations and the role of unofficial assets in national security. Dr. Vasquez, General Hayes said during the post-operation debrief, your results speak for themselves. You've eliminated a major terrorist threat while gathering intelligence that will prevent similar networks from developing. However, your methods exist entirely outside our established command structures and oversight mechanisms. Elena responded with the calm confidence that Jake had observed throughout their association. General, modern threats require modern solutions. The Heritage Coalition succeeded initially because they understood and exploited conventional American military thinking. Defeating them required approaches that couldn't be predicted or countered using their intelligence about our standard operations. The conversation that followed would reshape American special operations doctrine for decades to come. Elena had demonstrated that certain threats could only be countered by operators who existed outside conventional military hierarchies. But integrating such capabilities into official structures posed unprecedented challenges for oversight and accountability. What happens now? Jake asked Elena privately after the official debriefing concluded. You've proven that independent operations can achieve results that conventional military approaches can't match. But you can't continue operating without any official recognition or support? Elena smiled with an expression that suggested she had anticipated this question months before their first encounter in Afghanistan. What happens now is that American special operations evolves to meet modern threats. Some operators will continue working within traditional structures, while others will develop new approaches to challenges that require unconventional solutions. 6 months later, Jake received a new assignment that would have been impossible to explain to anyone outside a very small circle of military and intelligence officials. He became the commander of a unit that officially didn't exist, working with operators like Elena, who provided capabilities that couldn't be acknowledged through conventional channels. The unit's missions were never discussed in official briefings, their successes were never publicly recognized, and their methods were never documented in standard military records. But their impact on American national security was undeniable, preventing threats that conventional forces never even detected. Elena continued operating as Ghost 9, but now she worked within a shadow structure that provided official support while maintaining the independence that made her effective. Her warehouse command center was replaced by secure facilities that connected her to resources across the intelligence community, and her independent funding was supplemented by classified budgets that ensured she had access to the most advanced technology and intelligence available. Jake often reflected on the chain of events that had begun with a mysterious voice providing overwatch support in Afghanistan and culminated in the creation of an entirely new approach to special operations. Elena had started as an individual operator working outside official channels, but she had become the catalyst for fundamental changes in how America approached modern warfare. The call sign Ghost 9 had evolved from representing a single operator into symbolizing a new category of special operations asset, individuals with exceptional capabilities who could achieve results that conventional military structures couldn't duplicate. They operated in the spaces between official policies and necessary actions, handling threats that required solutions beyond traditional military doctrine. Years later, when other operators asked Jake about the origins of the shadow units that had become essential elements of American special operations, he would simply mention that sometimes the most important innovations in warfare came from people who were willing to operate outside, establish systems to protect the lives of those who served within them. Ghost 9 had started as a voice in the darkness providing tactical support, but had become something far more significant. Proof that America's greatest strategic advantage wasn't superior technology or overwhelming force, but the ability to adapt and innovate when faced with enemies who thought they understood how Americans fought wars.